Good morning, everybody. It is a gorgeous Tuesday here in the Northeast. Hopefully, it's a good day where you are as well. We're going to have a good day of articles to go through with you on our GenAI news briefing. I'm here with a full house today of analysts, so it should be a really good discussion. We've got lots of use cases to go through today. Probably the most interesting and I'd call it aggressive from Morgan Stanley. We've got Walmart, Saudi Aramco, Mattel, and we've got some research and a few articles outside of the use case area to go through. So without further ado, let me bring the first one up, Ankaj.
Thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today comes from Morgan Stanley, and it talks about how Morgan Stanley is using GenAI to get a near real-time view into every client and what every person is saying in the calls.
Yeah, this one kind of blew me away. The big brother is here listening to every conversation that is had with a client to aggregate that all, summarize it, give it to all the financial advisors across Morgan Stanley. It made me a little squeamish if I was a Morgan Stanley customer personally, but let's see what everybody thinks about it. John, start us off.
Yeah, I was going to make the case for essential here. I mean, this is amazing, scary and amazing. This is like the hive brain. And I think it's one of the things in the article that I think was super important was that people were worried about sending their information to OpenAI. And we've talked a little bit before on this analysis about what we think is going to be a huge trend around private AI, which is if organizations are going to do this, where they're basically going to create one giant, cognitive collection of what is going on, then they probably should do it privately, not do it with a vendor. But anyway, they've made the choice to do it with OpenAI. I think they're talking about they save the analysts an hour or so, half an hour to an hour of debrief and writing up the calls. There are the normal concerns about hallucination, which should be managed. I think it should be very interesting. But they also raise interesting things around, legal liability that might be opened up if you have an unhappy investor or whatever. You can go back and actually see the conversations and such. And then, of course, there's, I'm sure, regulatory stuff which may come in. Although with the most recent Supreme Court decision, that might be muted. So I would give it essential. This is a major bank going deep in a core activity, full automation. So I think it's something that our AI leader needs to read and understand.
Something they didn't share in the article is whether they will ask a client if they want to this, right? If I'm a client, I would like to have the choice as to whether my conversation is going to be recorded and stored on an OpenAI server and spread around to the entire company. So I'd be curious. I don't know, John, if you were a customer, would you consent to this?
I would, because I believe that we're already fully examined and recorded, both by institutions and by the shadow surveillance agencies. So I don't feel I'm any more exposed than I am already.
David's a good. I know when I call Fidelity, every one of those customer service calls are recorded.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's a way to opt out of that.
Virtually every call of the financial institution is recorded.
But this one's a little different. This is sounding like you're sitting with a client, maybe even live in the office, and you're discussing your finances very deeply and getting advice on how to, make investments, etc. It feels like it's another level to me.
Yes.
So, I was going to say I agree with Dr. John, but one thing I would say as well, in other words, essential, or at bare minimum important. And the reason is I can't even get on a call 9 times out of 10 now, a business call, that Fireflies or something isn't included. And I'm not always asked. So, I mean, yes, they should ask, but it's happening. So I agree with him that this is the wave of the future and things are going to be recorded, and it's going to get to the point where I don't know that I'd go as far to say they're not going to have you as a client if you don't accept it, but I think they're going to force the hand. But I'm sorry, Dr. John, I think I cut you off.
No. Yeah, I just think that I think it's true that in New York State, if you're talking to any financial services person, they don't even have to notify you that you're being recorded. That's
right.
Yeah, I think there will be gradations, however, because the calls that you call for something recorded, but they're recorded specifically for quality assurance. And I think there will be gradations, quality assurance versus your investment strategies, your thoughts about this particular company, whatever. So I feel that the analysts themselves, the advisors, will be skirmish about this. So there will be gradations with what information is kept and shared, and I think it will take some time to get that sorted. Remember, I grew up in the Soviet Union. I would certainly object to that being recorded and shared, and certainly shared with OpenAI for training further. So I
Can I talk us off the Can I talk us off the essential ledge here potentially if everyone's on board with that?
No,
I don't think it's essential at all. This is wildly speculative. It may never even come to market for all we know. There are no timelines. They don't talk about when they're actually going to do this. They're just talking about their plans. There's nothing in this article.
It says they already ran a trial with
300 people, yeah, and then
No,
we're only
I thought that trial with 300 people was with their initial generative AI that helps summarize stuff, not recording the phone call.
Oh, came off the recording of phone calls is my assumption. That's where that's what they summarized.
Yeah, but I don't get. I got to tell you, I rated this as optional, maybe important. I don't understand why we think this is so different from everything that's being done in medical offices, where every encounter with a physician, and you talk about intimate conversations, is recorded and summarized and draft form for the doctor to create a note. It's exactly what they're doing here. Nothing more at the moment. Now, if they start to do global analytics, that was speculation. Morgan Stanley did not say anything about doing global analytics on this stuff. They just talked about saving analysts time by summarizing conversations. Great. It's a good use case, but not that different from lots of others that we've seen. Customer service support, basically.
Oh boy, I disagree. I mean, we're talking about sending the entire corpus of the interaction of one of their most important branches of their organization to OpenAI. They are talking about analyzing it at the organizational level. A lot of times I think our privacy and so forth has been saved by the bureaucracy of data combination. And now we're talking about intelligence doing that. I mean, it's almost like my worry is not, will I be exposed? I'm already exposed. My worry is the worry from the movie Brazil, where you get misidentified. The problem would be that, somebody hallucinates you into doing something that you didn't do, and then you have to prove you didn't do it. Anyway, David, hang strong, essential.
Optional.
Oh my goodness, you know how I am. I'm going to split the difference. Important.
There is no greatness in moderation.
It's a democracy.
Oh, wait a second. Okay, let's do a democracy. Okay, essential. Paul, you're essential, right?
No, I'm deferring to the chalk moderator today. So I am essential.
People, chickening out when it comes time to vote.
Yeah.
So we have three essentials. Okay, and then what? How many important?
I can go for important because this might be the other trend, but I think it will be moderated hugely. We live in a democracy. That's why I live here. I think it will be moderated.
I don't know what the Supreme Court just did. We may not be in a democracy for too much longer, but but
I think the conversation we just had was representative. I think hallway conversation that our AI leader would have. So that's another argument for essential.
All right. So we got 3 for essential, and in the democracy, the majority wins.
Yeah, but we had also 2 optionals and an important.
Yes. Okay. So we have
David, make the decision, David.
I already did. You're arguing with me. Important.
Well, you're being inconsistent with our premise. What can I do? I'm just trying to enforce the law.
Right.
Amanda, the professor is not a good student. The professor likes to be in the front of the classroom.
What? Agreed. But I'm on his side.
Multi-choice ballot, so the majority wins. Whoever gets the most votes wins, and the most votes went to essential. Anyway. important it is, I guess. All right.
All right, on to the next.
Okay, the next one comes from ServiceNow, and it talks about how ServiceNow is taking advantage of the data on its platform.
All right, ServiceNow. What do we think, Luda?
I rated it as optional. We've talked about the data that is collected on platforms being used for big performance advantage and the like. And they have several use cases they describe, even though not in detail, of how they are doing it. So it's a good article to read, but optional, I think.
All right, anyone have a case for important? And Luda, maybe you could share some of the ways that they discuss that they're approaching AI.
So they essentially put it in every process of the company, or trying to. So into the flows of workflows, into specific tasks, and they're trying to be very cognizant of what data is being used and how it's being used. So over time, as employees are using it, it will become more and more powerful. They also do a lot of training, it appears, on how to use the data with their employees, and what they are reporting is that employees get a lot of new ideas of how to use it, which we've stressed on a number of occasions. So good case on how to use data that you already have.
So
right.
I'm going to rate, I thought this was important, and in consistency, John, and I can't see how you aren't jumping up and down and saying this is not essential. This is effectively exactly the same and more intrusive than the prior article. They are using it everywhere. They are absolutely saying quite explicitly that they're rounding up all the data and using it to analyze global trends. And so this is exactly the same as the prior thing. It is customer service, which ServiceNow is in the heart of. So it makes sense that they're on the leading edge. And I would argue for a practitioner, this is important to pay attention of. They are the canary in the coal mine because they're right in the heart of customer service, a big use case, because they're so aggressively pursuing it. It's worth paying attention to how it goes for them. They're going to claim it's going great right now, but we won't know for a little while. But to me, it's hard for me to tell the difference. If you change the names of the firms, what's the difference between this article and the prior article?
I think Ashish makes the case for why I made it important, not essential. Was he said, hey, look, this notion that you have financial services institutions, but I could go for essential here. I thought there were at least two very, very interesting things here. One is they've been on a 5-year journey, which is the same as some of the other folks we've dealt with, such as Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. It takes about 5 years to retool the base. And then the other thing is the componentization of modeling capability. That's a very powerful when you get that kind of that modularity of function. I'm good for essential, but the mob is going to overwhelm me. I feel like in France, and
No, but guys, there's a big difference though. See, in the first article, there was a big brother overview, right? They were monitoring how the advisors, what advisors were told to say to the clients in the marketing way, right? And they were trying to see whether they did that or not. The folks that were on the other end, there were certain things that they were sharing with their financial advisors. They wanted to capture those, and this can be very, very private data. Here is for the advantage of enterprise. Over there, I'm not sure it's for the advantage of the individual who is their client. So it was,
but I don't see this as being the advantage of the individual. It's the advantage of ServiceNow. Maybe it'll work to the advantage of the individual, and you could argue the same thing for Morgan Stanley.
I see.
And people, look, financial data is more sensitive. The striking thing to me is that people aren't more uptight about the medical stuff, which is, to me, even more sensitive conversations.
Yeah, and ServiceNow, I'm sure, is used by a bunch of people who sell, medical and other very intimate products.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't see it as that different, but I understand that emotional reaction to financial planning and things like that. But I think it's more emotional than rational. This is you know, again, all customer service, you could say, is surveillance at this point, right? Every conversation is recorded for compliance reasons, for quality reasons. And I'm sure what they call quality is exactly what Morgan Stanley was talking about. Are we saying the right things to our customers?
Yeah, you make a good point. I'm swayed to go important. That's fine.
But I think that, to me, the bigger important thing is this is, as John said, this is a company that is all in for several years in the heart of one of the most important areas of, we think, fruitfulness for generative AI. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Well, on the surveillance thing, I mean, I'd like to see, we're already surveilled today. So every time I drive around the neighborhood, the Ring things are following me. Every time I go through a toll booth, they've got my license there. Every time I go downtown Boston, there's cameras in most of the things here. Every time I walk in the store, there's cameras. So I think we're already in the surveillance state.
We are, and have been for a long time. If you go to Europe, it's 10 times. Just watch the BritBox mystery series, and you'll see everything they do is based on, oh, there was a camera there, we can catch this guy.
My girlfriend loves that series. All right, we're going important on this one. Let's go to the next. Akash.
Okay. The next one comes from the energy giant Saudi Aramco, and it talks about how they are betting on GenAI after the peak oil era.
All right, Tim, kick us off on this one.
So I think this is essential if you're in the natural resource industry, and I'll get into why. I think it's optional. Maybe I could be arguing to important for everybody else. The reason it's essential if you're in the natural resource industry is that Saudi Aramco, which is what this article has, again, curated, they say, again, I'll start with a big caveat, no details here, but they say they've spent a ton of money building their own supercomputers, building their own models based on their own data, which they say is meticulous over decades. That's pretty powerful if you're in the natural resource industry. They claim they can predict literally just through simulation rates of flow, geological issues, so they don't even have to drill test wells anymore. So that's enormously valuable if you're in the natural resource arena. It's interesting otherwise, but you're not going to have access to this stuff because it's Saudi Aramco. Maybe they'll spin it off, but again, it's very, very tuned to natural resource development. So it's unclear it'll go further than that. So it's a big investment by an entity with tons of money, and they're supported by PIF, the Public Investment Fund, which has tons more money. So there's an enormous amount of funds being put in here. So if you're interested in the geopolitics of it, they're trying to create a Middle Eastern tech hub around this stuff, and they may well do it, but that's a long-term proposition and highly speculative and more of a geopolitical issue than a AI leader issue.
All right, John, I think you put an E on this one too. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was essential because here we have an industry where you have the market leader, pouring a ton of money and effort into essentially creating next level intelligence. And what I thought was interesting is the fundamental idea that whatever business you're in, that you might be competing on the intelligence, not on the thing itself. And that if you can create more general intelligence, and just like many, many years ago, we wrote an article called Exploiting the Virtual Value Chain. We asserted that if you have a superior virtual value chain, you dominate the physical value chain. And I would make the same argument that if you have a superior intelligence layer, you dominate the virtual value chain, and thereby dominate the physical value chain. So and this is a big time issue. I'm not optimistic that the Saudis are going to be able to attract the genius talent necessary to build this stuff because of their culture, and because of the way that they treat their culture in general, and the way they venture capital and so forth. But I think the effort is fascinating and something for everybody to learn from. In addition, and I agree with Tim that it's essential for oil and gas, but this general trend of competing on the intelligence layer is well played out here.
Yeah, and John, one thing I mean, the Saudis obviously made money by constraining a fixed asset oil that was needed in the world here. I think the question for me, it's open, is intelligent AI at the highest level. How fixed supply is that?
Right.
I think you're making the point that, you know, even if it is fixed, they may have trouble getting the right engineers. I mean, yeah. The war for talent is off the map in Silicon Valley, as people know, in terms of getting engineers.
Well, the thing is, too, the skew of productivity. Like, if the best oil engineer to the worst oil engineer, I don't know how much they can improve your oil field. Let's say it's 200%. The best AI team versus the worst AI, the average AI team can do 10,000, 100,000 times more. So it's just a totally curve, huh?
Yeah. And I agree. The idea of meta information and the steering information is the way I think of it is always more valuable than the car, right? If you can steer better, you're going to do better. And so meta information in almost every industry almost always is a winning hand. I just don't see if I am an AI leader, is this going to affect my day-to-day life? At your level, yes. I want to think about how do I get to this meta level of information about my particular processes and sector, and how do I gain advantage there? But that's a second order reading of this article. So Professor Sfiocla, I genuflect in your direction for your intelligence, but for the average person, it's going to be hard to pull that out of here. You should just write an article about that part.
I think so. All right, we'll go on important on this one. Next.
Okay, the next one is a research paper which talks about scaling synthetic data and with 1 billion personas.
All right, this was a pretty creative idea. Adam, what do you think?
Not just because it's research, but I think this is falling into the category of interesting but optional. So basically, to summarize, what they've done is they've been able to literally simulate 1 billion different personas curated from web data. So the theory is that by having this large sample set of input, you can create really good synthetic data for training models. But if you actually click through to the PDF, apparently you can also do it to extract information from models. In the further reading, like into the PDF itself, they explained that they were able to generate a 7 billion parameter model that matched the performance of GPT-4 Turbo. And so they say this is potentially even dangerous research because of its ability to extract information from LLMs. So they're not going to actually be releasing it. So it's super interesting stuff. It opens some interesting avenues in terms of how we can get additional synthetic data, but I consider it optional because there's really nothing that can be actioned here.
It's too powerful to make money off.
Yeah.
The interesting thing to me is I still haven't seen anybody really answer the question, and these folks just didn't address it, which is everything is done here by LLMs. So the generation of the personas, the generation of the knowledge, the testing of the knowledge, and the evaluation of the tests was all done by LLMs. And I'm like, okay, how accurate is that? They're just assuming, well, we evaluated the test the same way GPT-4o did. Okay. I feel like, back to my early days as a kid when my mother said, well, if your friend jumped off the Empire State Building, would you? And so because OpenAI does it, it's got to be great, right? I don't know. I could be fine, but there's very little detail on these things. This is one of the big concerns that people have is how do you really know what the accuracy of these things is? Right, so either you keep it in a place where accuracy is not that essential, or I don't know how you solve this problem, but I don't think these people did. So I'm a little skeptical beyond the basic research nature of it, of how good it really is.
Yeah, and Tim, that's why I think it's a great example. Another example is somebody confusing capacity versus accuracy. We're able to summarize meeting notes. They may not be very accurate. We're able to create these billion personas, that may or may not be accurate or of value.
Right. And we know the other thing is, it's interesting where the research goes. There has been, at least again, anecdotal, I haven't seen lots of good data on this idea that, you know, we all do it now. You are an expert in blah, blah, blah. So this idea of a persona-based thing tends to produce better results, according to the theories. We don't know why. It's interesting that nobody's looking at, well, why is that? It's just ones and zeros running around a computer, folks. We should be able to understand that.
All right, one more comment from.
Can I just say, we got to remember where these folks are from. These folks are from Tencent, the Tencent Research Center in Seattle, which I assume is a very, very useful intelligence location for China. You know, and you know, so
good point.
And I've been trying to dealt a lot with the Chinese government identity and so forth. And one of the things they said is, look, American democracy can't scale to 330 million people. It doesn't work at that scale. And so at 1.5 billion, which they're looking for ways to manage the populace at that scale. And this looks like a fantastic movement toward population management in terms, like, if you think of it from an intelligence and a, you know, standpoint, the fact that they're not releasing it, I think is pretty interesting. You know, I think this is very powerful medicine, and to me, it's at least important, maybe essential. If you're a brand manager, man, you should be. I mean, my goodness, talk about a way. Forget going to Columbus, Ohio. No offense, Paul, and you know, testing a new product. Here you've got a billion personas.
Yeah, it is being used by some people in marketing that I'm talking to in that way and creating personas. I just want to give Luda the floor because I saw you jump in. Move on.
I agree with John on important, and the reason being different reasons. We all agree that we need synthetic data, right? And people are monitoring this. There are two barriers to getting synthetic data. One is it doesn't scale, and second is verification of quality, right? And so this approach does scale. So that can be used. Now, when we fix the barrier of quality assurance, right, then I think the synthetic data is in. So I feel that it is at least important to tell the folks that are monitoring this synthetic data movement is that we can now scale that. There's a method to scale that. So important for me.
All right, we're all over the map today. This is what happens when we have a full house. We got essential, optional, important. You know I'm going down the middle. Important. What's next?
Okay, the next one comes from Metal, and it talks about how Metal is bringing your next Barbie box to life.
Yeah, so they're using generative AI to help create packaging, etc., to kind of accelerate the product development cycle. Paul, what did you think about this?
It's optional. If you're not using generative AI tools for brainstorming, you are behind. But great use case, but optional. Very mainstream use case.
Right. I liked it for that. This is, you know, I know you guys, I've heard some of your sessions, and I feel flattered that the pocket analogy has gotten so far. This is definitely one for the lower left, back right pocket corner. Because it's an interesting use case by a very mainstream company. Yes, it's a kind of standard stuff, but they're doing it. They're doing it for real, and they're doing it with products, and they're a company that can really use this at scale because they make so many products every year.
All right, I'm going to go optional on this one, but agree it's could be a back pocket. We'll note that, Tim. All right, I think we're finally on to the last one.
Yes, David. So the last one comes from Walmart, and it discusses a little bit in brief about how Walmart is using GenAI for payroll, employee digital experience, and a few other things.
All right, last article of the day goes to Amanda.
Yeah, David. So I would say that most of the I don't know if I want to go as bold as say most of the solutions I see, before they're deployed outside of the organization, they're doing something inside of the organization. So while this could be an interesting use case, for me, so many companies are doing these things in-house to test them before they go outside of the organization. So for me, excuse me, I see this as another one of those use cases, albeit payroll or whatever. So I'm probably more on the optional camp for that reason, but I could be swayed to important, but this is pretty optional for me.
Yeah, I mean, Walmart's got a lot of solutions. I know we've talked about them before. They really have embraced this and are using it in a number of ways. Any other thoughts?
Again, this is the backside upper left corner pocket argument, but I put this one, I sort of lean to important because it's Walmart, because they have built their own set of models. This is at least the third or fourth article about a generative AI application they're using. And they're using it both for their employees and for payroll monitoring, I guess, which is an internal application as well. But remember, the first one they did was like a shopping assistant, which actually was public. So they're all in, and Walmart is one of the largest companies in the world. So the fact that they're doing this, the fact that they're building their own tools is interesting. I just think it's important to keep track of what these larger companies are doing.
Yeah, can I just put a bookmark that? And I know there's some friends of ours who are talking about how all this stuff is baloney. We have a company with millions of people that's implementing this stuff in payroll. I mean, give me a break. For anybody who thinks that this stuff is, a hype curve is nuts.
All right. Any other thoughts on this one? All right, we're going to go optional because we did on the last one, but we'll make a note that Walmart is gangbusters on this. All right.
Well, David, I don't know. We marked a lot of, like, to Tim's point, we marked a lot of those articles that are used, case studies above, as essential or important. This is another one. This is, I think, very important. It's a huge company. And the first line says it all. The biggest global retailer sees itself as a tech giant. That's what they're trying to do. And I think this is, the many articles about them, but they are rewriting their business.
Yeah,
I guess that's the use case in the back pocket. This is, they are rewriting their business with AI. That's worth note.
I feel like we should have a discussion about our rating system, right? Because this article itself, it provides no detail. Like, what exactly are they doing with the payroll? It just says they're using it in payroll. We don't even know how. They talk about the other use case. They give you a slight bit of more. I just don't see, like, what do you do with this other than say, ooh, Walmart, and I better get going on my own. So that's why I felt like this one is optional. At least ServiceNow article had like a little bit more detail that you could dig into, but this one, I mean, it's like 4 paragraphs, and it's just like not giving you a ton. But I do agree on the trend side of it, so that's why I feel like but I think our newsletter serves this purpose, right? So we could say this is an important trend to watch, but the actual reading of the article you could probably like live without. So we'll go optional. How did we do today? I know we were all over the map here for you, Ankaj. I have no idea where we landed after this discussion. Okay, we've got 4 importance: Morgan Stanley, ServiceNow, Saudi Aramco, the personas that will help you create synthetic data, all important. And then we went optional on Mattel and Walmart, mainly because Mattel, a common use case, Walmart, I didn't feel like there was enough detail. Wow, this was a good one today. I love it when we have a full house. Hope everybody enjoyed this episode. We have one more tomorrow, and then we'll just note to everybody that we will take Thursday and Friday off for the U.S. holiday, which will probably make next Monday very interesting. So as usual, we really appreciate you joining, and we'd appreciate even more if you sign up for our newsletter, if you subscribe to us on YouTube, and if you come visit us at our conference, October 7th and 8th in Boston. All of this information is in our website and all over social, and some of it's in this invite for today. So please do take a look and join us in these endeavors. Thanks everybody for coming out this morning, analysts. It was a great one. Have a good day, everybody.